We are back on Taking Care of Business on Kern Radio, News Talk 1180, 1230 KGEO, 1410 KERI, and now in Albuquerque, New Mexico at 1000 KKIM. So, Clay, what did you think of Pastor David Jeremiah?
Well, I was just impressed this time as I was the first time I met him when I had breakfast with he and some of the men from his church, and he gave his testimony.
About a week and a half ago, I was just rummaging through the dial. It was just me sitting on the couch, and I caught his program and his TV program, and he's excellent ministry he has, and he's been blessed with over the years.
And he has an awesome church.
Yes, he does.
So I was glad to be able to attend it.
Yep. And this is a segue here we're going to do here. And speaking of great ministries and great works and people who are really, really involved in the community, our next guest is somebody who we've had on before, Lili Marsh, who is in charge of the Honor Flight, which is a great, great program. Lili, welcome back to Taking Care of Business.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. So, one thing I wanted to talk about out of the chute is, for those people that don't know what Honor Flight is, it's a program where they send World War II veterans back to Washington, D.C. And, as we know, there's not a lot of these gentlemen left. And two of the people that went on the very first flight passed away just recently. One of them was a good friend of Clay and mine, Stan Schwartz. So,
yeah, very sad. And I had told someone I was talking to is even though every day as part of our spiel, which is all true, that nationally we're losing 1,000 World War II vets a day.
Wow.
And even if you just check your local paper, you can see that every day there's at least one or two in the obits, which is very sad. So even though we go around and we say those words, until it actually hits home, you just don't internalize it that much. And the two folks on our very first inaugural flight, Louis Koerner and Stan Schwartz, two memorable and wonderful personalities, so hard to forget, passed away the same week. And in our photographs of our first Honor Flight Kern County wreath ever being placed, it's Louis and Stan that are standing side by side at the wreath. So that's a little eerie, and I hope that there's something to that somewhere in the hereafter.
You bet. And our thoughts and prayers go out to both their families. And like I say, in Stan's case, Jeff is a good friend of Clay's and mine, and we've known them both for years. So our heart goes out to them.
Yeah, Stan was had a personality plus. He affected everyone he came in contact with. He was hilarious, and he's a memorable guy, and he'll be sorely missed.
Definitely.
So, Lili, what you do is you actually contact these vets somehow, and then you take them back to Washington, D.C., you give them a great tour, and then you bring them back to Bakersfield in anticipation of them living through the event, because you have had, I believe, a couple that were scheduled to go that never were able to get on the plane.
Yeah, Captain Reap, who's well-known gentleman, was supposed to be on our first flight this spring, and he passed away the week before the other two gentlemen. And he was a frontline artist. He would actually go to the front lines and draw and sketch what he saw, and his works are all over the country. They're in the Smithsonian, not just here locally, but all kinds of war museums. And unfortunately, he didn't make it to that flight. But fortunately, we were able to record his war story, and what a story it was, down at American Sound Recording Studios earlier this year. So it will be kept and live on forever, and it's going to be in the Library of Congress. So,
I have to thank you for something. You inspired me to do something. In December, Clay was gone for a couple of weeks, and I took one of the weeks and I did a show on the Greatest Generation, and I picked my parents. My mom was in Amsterdam during the war, and she actually played with Anne Frank as a kid. And my father was in the Canadian Army, and that's where he met my mom, was in Amsterdam. So and they're both alive, so I got a chance to interview the two of them, and I played that as a Greatest Generation show. And one of the reasons I did that was so I could do exactly what you were saying as far as recording it. We recorded the show, obviously, and I sent it to all of my grandkids so they would have something of their great-grandparents. And I think that's important for us to do, is to record this information, because once this generation is gone, they're walking history books for an era that is important in our history, and it's gone. It's going.
Right, and part of our program is we are recording their stories before they fly, although in the future we're actually going to start doing it after they fly for some of them. But it will not only go to the Library of Congress, it's also going to go to the local schools. Excuse me. And the difference between reading something in a book that are just words and seeing someone on a screen tell the story of how they, saw Mussolini hanging in the square,
right,
or they got, the luck would have it, the way they got off the ship that was carrying the parts to the atomic bomb. And I mean, it's stories that you're, with the little detail that you never will read in a book, and your jaw just drops to hear these stories. It's amazing. And some of these guys, when we do the recordings, they've never ever talked about it before. And we have vets and active service personnel doing the interviews, and they kind of speak the same language, and they can often get more from the World War II veteran than, say, somebody else might be able to.
Yeah. Our in-studio guest is Lili Marsh from Honor Flight. I wanted to just share a story with you. My oldest daughter did a Holocaust Remembrance Day when she was at Cal Lutheran. And one of the most touching moments of my life, I was sitting there listening to a couple that were in Hungary, Jewish family, and they had gone through the Holocaust, and they were in a concentration camp, and they ended up on a train, and the Nazis opened up the train, said, okay, you guys are free, and they let them go, and all of a sudden they just started mowing down people. They threw the rest of the survivors back in the train. They went for another hour and a half. The train stopped, and about 15 minutes later, the train was opened up, and there were a bunch of American soldiers. In the back of the room was a World War II vet who said, was it such and such a day at such and such a place? And I get choked up thinking about this. And they said, yes, how did you know? He said, I was one of those American soldiers.
Oh, my gosh.
There was not a dry eye in the place. We were all in tears. Those are the kind of stories that we have to get firsthand. And we don't teach American history, unfortunately, as well as we should, because there are lessons that we can learn from this generation. We got to learn them now, because they're, like you say, at the rate of 1,000 a day, we're losing them quickly.
And speaking of that, we have a couple of school classes. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what schools, but they're adopting a vet. It's a $1,500 to sponsor a vet to fly. That's what it takes to get them there, feed them, blah, blah, blah. And so they will know who their vet is. This is your guy, and off they can go to the airport and see him off. They can come to the airport and watch him come in. Their vet will most likely be more than willing to come to their classroom and talk about his personal experience. And it just, it's really, really exciting stuff for
Is there a cost for them to adopt a vet?
It's $1,500 is the sponsorship, is what it takes to get them back there with the plane, the hotels, the tours, and everything that we feed them. I mean, they don't need a thing. We even give them their luggage
and a shirt.
Wow!
We give them a duffel bag because we have our capacity is very small in terms of luggage, and so they have to fill up this bag, and it's a great way to keep it limited, is to say, this is the bag that you can fill.
And then you give them a colored shirt so you can keep track of them, too, right?
We do. In the winter, they had jackets, and in the summer, they have shirts, and the Guardians have one color, the vets have another, and then our nurses or EMTs have yet another, so that in a crowd you can see them should they be needed.
So
but,
if a vet wants to go, or there's someone who wants to go as a guardian for a vet, who do they contact and how do they contact them?
Well, I'm always at the Petroleum Club, which is sometimes easier to remember, but our phone number is 544-VETS. 544-VETS. Or they can get in touch with me at the Petroleum Club. And the Guardians are self-funded, and it's about $1,200 for a guardian. And it's amazing to me how many people in this town have come out to spend $1,200 to take a complete stranger on this trip and make sure they have rewarding and safe experience. It's incredible how many people have volunteered to do that.
It's such a reward when you go on the program. I mean, you're treated to, you get special admission and you get security, and it's unbelievable. And even Kevin McCarthy stepped up last time.
Yeah, the last time, the first time he took them with a small group, he took them to the Capitol and on a private tour, and this last time with 90, and then you double that because of Guardians, he took them back in there again, introduced them to John Boehner, Paul Ryan, and it was amazing. He's done so much for our guys. He just came up for those same guys that just flew in November. He did an ice cream social and gave them each a flag and a photograph he flew over the Capitol in their honor, a photograph and a challenge coin, and I mean, just so sweet.
When we come back from the break, I want to talk a little bit about the flights that you have coming up.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Kern Radio News Talk 1180.